Good afternoon, everybody, and greetings from Makanda. Lebo, thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. It's lovely to be here. I'm sorry that I'm not with you guys in Johannesburg. And many thanks also for Chow and to Wilhelmina as well for such amazing presentations. I'm almost scared to follow, but here we go. Lessons from the Virtual National Arts Festival, how we're adapting, how we're changing, and how we think the world is going to look in the next couple of months and next couple of years. So just as a reminder, I think the GIF in this presentation really does show just how quickly things changed for us. And nearly a year later, it's really important that we just stop and remember how cataclysmic March was. All festivals, theaters, galleries, museums around the world, as Lebo pointed out, closed. And we were expected to do something really, really extraordinary. But also, just a sobering note, many have not reopened. And the future of live events, especially at the scale at which many of us work, are really still very, very uncertain. So we are all grappling with change at an unprecedented speed and with the need to adapt at an unprecedented speed. So just in a snapshot, we went from building stages at the National Arts Festival to building web pages, and we did it in about 100 days. I would really recommend that nobody try and do it in 100 days. It was incredibly difficult and incredibly complex, and the time was such that we didn't have time to test and experiment. We just went live with 270 productions in our curated and on our VFringe program, 83,000 visitors to our website who viewed over 900,000 pages. We had crafters, vendors, traders joining us in a virtual marketplace that we created as a showroom in collaboration with the Craft and Design Institute. Over 100 of those joined us from the Eastern Cape. We had 144 productions on the VFringe. We had over 3,000 people joining us in live workshops and webinars. One of the most important things about our virtual festival, it wasn't all just video on demand or live stream. Some of it was actually live work presented for the first time on a whole range of digital platforms in incredibly innovative ways. Zoom, WhatsApp, and incredible technological innovation by artists, which I think we're still a little in awe of, those of us on the festival team, because it was quite the most extraordinary amount of energy that was brought to the room. We had a very, very different audience, mainly South African, interestingly enough, from Gauteng in the Western Cape, whereas traditionally our core audience comes from the Eastern Cape. More men than women. And again, traditionally in the live edition, our audiences tend to be women and tend to be fairly large groups. And of course, this came really as no surprise to definitely younger rather than older audiences. So we found a particular community who was watching differently, who was interacting with us differently, and spending time with us in very interesting ways. I was absolutely glued to the Google Analytics that came through on a second-by-second basis that was telling me who was accessing the site and from where. And we got a lovely WhatsApp message from Natalie, a newsletter reader, who said, "I want to congratulate you on such an excellent experience. The website was truly so well done. It was a bit weird at first not to be sitting in an audience, but I got used to it as the shows went on, and being able to jump up and make tea, etc., was actually quite cool. The digital platform, for me, will never replace the thrilling experience of flesh and sweat, but what a great effort. I will continue to support our amazing artists wherever possible. Well done." So those were the kinds of heartfelt messages that were coming through to the festival team as we struggled, as we failed, as we picked ourselves back up, got the website running again, and continued on with our journey in the virtual National Arts Festival. And that core loyal audience is, again, such an important feature of what we face in future. And we all, like every single festival last year, was faced with a critical decision, which was to say, do we adapt or do we cancel? Now, the National Arts Festival is a non-profit festival, and we have a mandate that is more than just selling tickets. We believe in the arts, we support the arts, we're a platform for expression and social cohesion and experience. So we decided to adapt and pivot, as Lebo so rightfully points out. And it sounds like such an easy thing to do. And this little GIF, by the way, is the classical jazz dance pivot. This is what it looks like. It's very elegant, it's very clean, it seems very easy. But as it turns out, what it actually is a lot harder than that. It's essentially the act of attempting to get a 3-seater sofa up a staircase with very little expertise and a lot of passion and energy. Pivot was basically the expression, not so much pivot, because we really are not quite designed to change at that kind of speed and at that level and scale. So looking back on our festival experience is actually really, really interesting. And I've now read a lot about the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I've read a lot about how technology is changing us and our world and what we do. And the National Arts Festival, as an organization and an event, has almost been a textbook case. So was there innovation and productivity? Check, no doubt. The festival team, who are extraordinary, both in terms of the core team of technical and artistic folks, but also the extended team, were able to innovate to an astounding degree. Were able to be so productive that we could present a festival in 100 days with 113 productions filmed remotely under lockdown conditions. If you remember, we started planning the festival at level 5 lockdown. We eventually delivered the festival in level 3 lockdown conditions. So those 8 filming locations produced 113 pieces of work that were then presented on the festival platform. As I said to you, there's no question we created new products and new audiences. And that in and of itself was incredibly empowering, unbelievably inspiring, and also forced us to do things in a different way. What the festival usually does is it opens a call, it reviews applications, and it says yes or no. Given the uncertainties of 2020, we had to completely change how we approach new products and audiences. We actually had to speak to the artistic community in new and exciting ways to really begin to create partnerships in the production, to really create conversations between the festival and ourselves in terms of what work could be delivered and how. And that's a lesson that we've learned works actually really well. And we're going to continue to do a lot more of that. And I'll get to our plans in future in a little bit. There's no question that we had far more efficient processes. We were not moving paper around. We were not moving enormous pieces of equipment around. We made extensive use of shared technologies like Google Drive and all of those things that now exist. Of course, Zoom. There was a little statistic that was published a little earlier this year. Apparently, collectively in the universe, we spent 55 million years in Zoom meetings. Pretty much felt like that. Yeah, And the festival seemed to have taken up a good couple of million of those years. But what we were was incredibly efficient because we had very little time. We had some resources, and we're incredibly grateful to our sponsors and donors, Standard Bank, Eastern Cape Provincial Government, National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, Business South Africa, Sarah Bartman District Municipality, who all came to the party and really saw what we were wanting to do and supported us in it. We had some cost savings because obviously we were presenting work in different ways. We were not setting up as many venues. We weren't transporting people physically around the country. And certainly we were able, with the resources that we had at our disposal and the time, to actually do an extraordinary amount of work. But there is a sad side to this story, a dark side to this story, which is also a portent of things to come, of what the fourth industrial revolution, or evolution as I like to call it, is going to mean for us. Redundant positions. What do you do when a paper-based system is no longer paper-based and you have administrators appointed to do that work? What do you do when your theater is not being used and your stagehands are not actively able to make a contribution to a virtual or technical event? So these are the things that we are now dealing with as an organization, which is the longer term impact of a massive skills change in our organization, a complete evolution of our business model away from merely live into digital. And just remember how uncertain live still is. Rapidly shifting roles. The extent to which the festival team started out imagining that the virtual festival was one thing, and it in fact was something completely different because we'd never done it before. Most of the time, we are a platform that delivers content. We don't necessarily create media content. And yet that's exactly what we were doing for the virtual festival. And it creates a lot of instability in organizations, especially one that had for 45 years very successfully delivered a live festival. And for myself, coming in for the first time, I think I was actually quite lucky because I had very little expectation of either a live or a digital festival. But the instability in the organization, as we all had to do completely different things, as our roles and responsibilities changed completely, as we were working completely apart from each other. The festival team, in fact, remains dispersed across the country and, in fact, across the world. As Ryan Bruton, our operations manager, joins us daily from Charlottesville in the United States. So we continue to be facing those kinds of challenges organizationally as we begin to adapt to new roles. We definitely had some attrition. We definitely had some long-term service providers for whom this work was not what they signed up to do. We lost some long-term staff members. And sadly, of course, at the time in the pandemic, we actually lost a valued co-worker and colleague, Sunda, our fringe stalwart, we lost due to COVID-19. And so we as an organization have faced absolute loss. And the need to adapt to gaps in our organization as we had this attrition. There were a lot of people who felt excluded from the process and to some degree alienation because they were not used to what was being presented and weren't necessarily able at such great speed to make the shift to appreciating work presented in this way. And I'm not sure if you recall some of the debates as we started to make these announcements about what we were wanting to do were questions from the artistic community about whether what we were doing was in fact bastardizing the arts, whether in fact our attempts to create theater for online audiences was not in fact creating film as a cinematic output rather than a theatrical output. So we had a lot of criticism and confusion, both from outside, but also from inside our own community. And of course, any major effort to do something new is going to have successes and failures. There was a very angry gentleman who was struggling with our viewer and wanted to know why he didn't have these problems with Netflix. Well, for those of you who know Netflix, you know that it's a multi-billion-dollar platform that streams content to 63 million households. Life goals. But for the moment, and certainly at the time, we were not there yet. And of course, grief. And this sounds like such a small thing, but there's no question that in the hearts and minds of every single person on the festival team was the grief for live events lost, the incredible burden of worrying about a technical events industry decimated by cancelled events, by the artistic community unbelievably negatively affected by COVID-19 as gigs dried up, as plans disappeared, and most critically, as income generating opportunities just dissolved into the mist. And unfortunately, we are still there. So in amongst all of what was going on, we also had to cope with an enormous amount of stress and strain and grief. So as we look to the future, and it's an interesting one, are we looking at a utopia? Are we looking at a dystopia? And that little image, I really miss the Nokia 3310. For those of you who are familiar with its silhouette, it's basically in the middle of the little image on the left-hand side of the presentation. But you can see how quickly technology started to advance. And in this era that we're entering into, creativity, agility, and innovation will take center stage. There is no doubt. And it was extraordinary to hear Charles' presentation about how a community-led history and documentation process could actually thrive under these circumstances. Wilhelmina's incredible presentation about how language is being introduced in new ways and with new tools and being saved through technology is such an interesting experience for what is possible in this world. Technology will really no longer be a luxury. We have to imagine it as a necessity. So the question of Wi-Fi, the question of universal broadband will be probably the most important policy agendas that we will all have going forward. And together with that, questions about whether or not our curriculum at all levels in our education system are going to be able to keep a pace with the development that we're all going through. And fundamentally, we're starting to see new and completely disruptive models emerge. Sectors like music have been going through this for some time, but the advent of the coronavirus pandemic and the speed at which we change things have really introduced technology faster than anticipated. We might have imagined a world where we went into a virtual festival in a couple of years. There was no rush. But in fact, now that we have, we now need to imagine, what does the revenue model for a digital festival look like? What do sponsor rights look like? How do we, as a festival that makes an enormous socioeconomic contribution to a geographic space, in this case, the city of Makanda, how do we do that in a digital edition? Is it even possible? And then, of course, the severe downside, the dystopian elements. And I think that the preceding presentations, especially Wilhelmina's, were so powerful because the pace at which things are going to change does mean that many folks will be left behind. Inadequate education, infrastructure, access to facilities and opportunities which already characterize the politics of poverty and the face of socioeconomic inequality are in fact likely to worsen if we do not intervene. Our tried and true revenue models are going to start disappearing. I remember a good couple of years ago talking to Bernard Jay, who was the CEO of the then Joburg Theatre. And he said at one point, all they had to do to fill the Nelson Mandela Theatre was to put an advert on during Carte Blanche, which, of course, as you know, is one of the premier slots on the DSTV bouquet of programming. And its advertising is at an incredible premium rate. But that would fill a theatre. But that changed. And more and more and more, we need to start understanding that our audiences are changing. Their expectations are changing. Their life expectations have changed. Their socioeconomic profile has changed. The income levels that they are earning have changed. And of course, people working from home now face completely different routines and lives. And we are going to have to change with them. And there is no question that redundancies are going to abound as occupations and jobs change and as skill sets are acquired, but then abandoned because of the speed at which things are changing. So the fourth industrial evolution, it's here. It arrived and it's here to stay. And it's growing and it's changing along with us. And we at the festival were given an incredible opportunity to essentially embrace it. And we had work like The Shopping Dead, which was theater produced through WhatsApp. Faye Kabali Kagwa and her incredible group of people really producing a groundbreaking piece of theater that could be viewed simultaneously by 240 people on a WhatsApp group. It was one of our most popular shows at the Virtual National Arts Festival, and really ushered in a completely new idea of what was possible. Now, one of the amazing things about recognizing that the fourth industrial evolution is here is that as it changes us, we can change it. So new art forms are emerging, but as Chow and Wilhelmina so profoundly pointed out, unless we actively promote and protect them, history, culture, language, and art forms are also going to disappear. What is the obligation that we face in this? How are we as a festival going to be both future-oriented as well as preservation-oriented? And what does that mean for our audience? What does that mean for our platform? Education systems are going to have to evolve, adapting and changing at an unbelievable speed. And we've been talking in South Africa, at least about lifelong learning for decades. And now it's absolutely real. Every single adult and child in this country are going to have to adopt an approach of learning, self-learning, evolution, success, and failure across an entire lifespan, because the speed at which change is happening means that all of us are going to need to evolve into new business models, new entities that are able to take risks, and for artists to evolve into new art forms. Now, innovation in this context for me is an instrument. It's not a quality or a talent or somehow something that somebody intrinsically has or doesn't have. It's an instrument like design, and it's a response to a problem. And that's something that we need to embrace, is systems of innovation. Innovation as practice, not just about how people respond to things. And again, I will say this, I have worked with groups of people from all occupations in my quite long history in both the public service and elsewhere, but I have never met any group of people that were able to innovate as quickly as this festival team. So whatever is being done to train technical professionals, theatre professionals, and artistic professionals, I think we actually have a head start in the innovation game. It's just a question of us maximizing that benefit. We need to recognize that there are different types of creativity. Again, it's not the same as artistry. Oh, she's so creative. He's so innovative, as though it was somehow something that somebody was born with. There are different kinds of creativity: divergent, lateral, aesthetic, systems thinking, and we need to be embracing that no matter where we are. As the CEO of an organization that is facing an unbelievably complex and uncertain future, it is incumbent on me to be creative in a variety of different ways. It's what everybody should expect. And equally, we should be expecting the same of artists, technicians, professionals, policy systems, government departments. And I know that's a stretch, but it is possible. But it needs to be something that we embrace. And very, very fundamentally, and Wilhelmina and Chow sort of pointed to this as well, is to say how we look at success and failure is essential to developing new approaches to how we create, experiment, and experience. Because fundamentally, we are entering a new phase of our lives, of our careers, of our professions. And we have been risk averse. We have been terrified of failure. And we need to start changing our orientation to that and choose to see failure as a learning experience and not as an exit, and not as a cataclysmic commentary on your skill and on your expertise. It is not. And we, as the organizations that essentially form this ecosystem, have to create enabling spaces for both success and, of course, failure. So, in closing, for IR and the National Arts Festival, so our core mandate is expanding exponentially. We're moving away from only creating to looking at innovating and educating. And there's no question for us that there is a digital future. We're going to be investing in things like big data for big leverage, because the information that we have is incredibly valuable in the marketplace, both in terms of reaching our audiences, but also in terms of helping our sponsors to achieve their objectives. We're going to be embracing technologies like virtual and augmented reality, creating new and networked performances, interactive performances, as we blend both live and technological and digital events. We're going to be using the Internet of Things, IoT, to begin to imagine new experiences and integrate technology into the festival experience for both safety purposes, COVID-19 distancing, for example, but also to make sure that we ensure that our audiences and our guests have the best possible experience. Blockchain is an incredible technology that will enable us to track and promote audience participation, protect rights, look at new kinds of ticketing systems, create long-term relationships with our audiences. So we really see the fourth industrial revolution as, in fact, being an opportunity for us more than a threat. We'll be focusing a lot on educating audiences and the artistic community, and really supporting convergence across our platforms. Because one of the interesting things that you may not know about the National Arts Festival is that our team, in fact, also organizes SciFest Africa, the National Science Festival. And we're starting to see relationships between science, engineering, technology, mathematics, innovation, and the arts in ways that we've never really imagined before. And joining those dots is something that we're going to be doing a lot more of. But fundamentally, the live experience will never be replaced, but it's going to be informed and shaped by technology. And we at the National Arts Festival, and in fact, all of the festivals that we organize throughout the year, are going to be changing right along with it. Thank you so much for your time and attention this afternoon.
The speakers today are just bringing the house down. Monica, there were so many amens and oohs and ahs just here in the theater from what you said. I think the idea of innovation being a muscle that we can build, innovation being a practice, it means that innovation can be learned. It means that we can get better at it. We can become less afraid of making mistakes and of trying new things. I think that's a very important concept to inculcate, not just in broader society, because everybody needs it right now, but particularly with artists, to let go of this idea of perfection, because it's absolutely unattainable. I mean, perfection is like the anathema to creativity. If you're trying to be perfect, you will never be creative, and we won't be able to take advantage of this moment. Thank you so much, Monica, for your presentation. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but all of our speakers today have been women. And the bulk of those women have been women of color. And this is really interesting, given the fact that the tech space globally is a space dominated by white men. We don't hate white men, of course, but we are happy to see this kind of representation in this space. It's necessary. So applause to us. Applause to you, Jay. Applause to Andani.Africa. Applause to you for tuning in. Please support the work of these speakers. Again, we are recording this entire forum, including your comments, because your comments have been brilliant. I'm sorry there's not enough time for me to engage with what is being said in the chat, but it is being documented. It will be a part of the official archive of this forum. And I'm so grateful that you guys are so switched on and so engaged. The stuff that's being said in the chats as well is just worthy. A lot of those comments themselves are worthy of forming the content of presentations that could be shared here as well. So thank you for that.